Good evening. The planned summit next month between President Trump and the leader of North Korea, Kim Jong-un, has been cancelled. Mr. Trump said it was because of what he called Pyongyang's recent hostility, with North Korean officials heavily criticizing senior members of the Trump administration. The announcement came just hours after foreign journalists were invited to witness what North Korea claimed was the destruction of tunnels at its nuclear test site. President Trump described the abandonment of the talks as a truly sad moment in history. Our North America editor John Sopel has the story.
This is CNN Breaking News.
For once, the breaking news strap really was worth the whoops and flashes. The historic would it, wouldn't it happen Singapore summit had hit the buffers, as many doubters had predicted. Donald Trump's extraordinary letter to Kim Jong-un, the expression of it. In it, he wrote, "Sadly, based on the tremendous anger and open hostility displayed in your most recent statement, I feel it's inappropriate at this time to have this long-planned meeting." His letter also spoke about the power of the US nuclear arsenal and that the meeting was Kim's idea, not his. At the White House, a somber President Trump had this to say.
Based on the recent statement of North Korea, I have decided to terminate the planned summit in Singapore on June 12th. While many things can happen and a great opportunity lies ahead potentially, I believe that this is a tremendous setback for North Korea and indeed a setback for the world. Hopefully, positive things will be taking place with respect to the future of North Korea. But if they don't, we are more ready than we have ever been before.
The legwork for it was being done by the President's Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo. There were gasps around the world when it emerged he'd travelled to Pyongyang in total secrecy to meet the North Korean leader. Today, Mr. Pompeo was giving evidence to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and sought to explain what had changed the President's mind.
Over the past many days, we have endeavored to do what Chairman Kim and I had agreed was to put preparation teams together to begin to work to prepare for the summit, and we had received no response to our inquiries from them.
The release of the President's letter coincided unerringly with the North Koreans playing host to a group of Western journalists invited to witness the destruction of a nuclear test site. But there was fury in Washington when Pyongyang put out a statement last night describing the Vice President as ignorant and stupid. And there seemed to be a threat. We can also make the US taste an appalling tragedy. At the heart of this is the demand for the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, a phrase that sounds simple but is open to vastly different interpretations. This might have been a historic summit in seeing these two leaders sit down at a table together. But as time went on, it became increasingly clear that's all it would be. Great expectations have been replaced by a cold dose of reality.
Well, we'll talk to our correspondent Laura Bicker, who's in Seoul, in a moment. But first, let's speak to John, who's in Washington. John, are we any closer to understanding what the real reasons are for this summit being cancelled?
Well, Clive, we've had a briefing from a senior White House official in the last hour or so. Frankly, some of the details that emerged were jaw-dropping. I mean, we learned that the Deputy Chief of Staff of the White House flew to Singapore last week with senior officials for a pre-arranged meeting with North Korean counterparts to discuss the logistics. And apparently, the North Koreans simply didn't turn up. At the nuclear test site where the kind of journalists were taken today, apparently international nuclear experts were meant to have been taken as well. They didn't go either. Given all that, it's kind of somewhat surprising that the White House didn't pull the plug on this summit earlier, and I think that speaks to Donald Trump's determination that it should go ahead, and he was very keen that it would. And I think that the White House has been very keen to counter today, now that they have pulled the plug, to counter the charge that Donald Trump has been naive and that he has been played by the North Koreans and the Chinese. Now, for all that, the President's letter was written more in sorrow than in anger. He holds out the possibility that this meeting could still go ahead at some point in the future. But the issues that derailed it are going to be hard to be put on track again. And it may be that the best chance for progress on this intractable issue has just passed.
Laura, if I can turn to you, do we have any idea when the South Koreans and President Moon was told that the meeting was off?
Well, officials here appeared blindsided. It almost as if their key US ally didn't tell them it was coming. President Moon issued a statement. After working so hard to get these two sides to the table, he urged them to talk directly to one another to try to ease the standoff. But they are used to this kind of disappointment on this peninsula. They've had 70 years in South Korea of dealing with an unpredictable neighbour. What they're perhaps not used to is an unpredictable US president. But this time to them felt different. And North Korea might say to the South, look, we tried. We blew up our nuclear test site. We released the 3 US detainees. We signed a declaration saying we would denuclearize. And they'll say, look, we even told our people that is something that we would do. But the main issue remains. They had nuclear weapons and showed no sign of giving them up easily. The ball is now in Kim Jong-un's court. And as this peninsula wakes up to the news that the summit is off, they'll wonder what he'll do next.
OK, Laura, thank you for that. Laura Bicker there live in Seoul, and Jen Sopel, thanks to you two in Washington.